Welcome back to another Village Torah session with me, your host, Rabbi Drew. We are now in Parashat Miketz. So we are still in the book of Genesis, and very much Joseph is really front and center. He really is, we've been following his journey so far, and certainly this week's Torah portion is a lot about Joseph. He's really the main focus, sort of the star. One thing that I have been wondering about, and certainly there's a lot to wonder about, which is the relationship between Joseph and dreams. It's no secret Joseph and dreams have been intertwined, have been linked together, and really share a special relationship. Joseph really comes across, not only in this week's Torah portion, but really in previous Torah portions, as really not only the dreamer par excellence, he dreams dreams, but also as a dream interpreter. Now, we first encountered the relationship between Joseph and dreams back when Joseph shared a couple of dreams of his own with his family. If you recall, he dreamed about various sheaves being harvested and bowing down, and various, the moon and the sun and stars, all those, and the relationship of bowing down. And the clear implication was that his brothers and even his parents would be bowing down to him, that he had a special place, and that they would all relate to him as either a certain exaltedness, giving him honor. Now that was, it could be perceived as kind of brazen, certainly arrogant, and ultimately that's what led his brothers to toss him in a pit and ultimately sell him or otherwise get rid of him. So they did not like his dreams. So we see that he's a dreamer. He dreamed dreams. And then that brings us to last week's Torah portion, where we have the baker and we have the drinks master, or the cupbearer of Pharaoh, who had been tossed into prison, and they each dreamed dreams. The baker dreaming about breads, and the drinks master dreaming about grapes on a vine, which obviously would ultimately turn into wine, which is why he was dreaming about them. Now, they couldn't really figure those out. What are we to do with our dreams? And so those two men who were incarcerated alongside Joseph come to him and ask him, what should we do? What is going on with our dreams? What are we to make of these? And Joseph shares with the baker, well, you don't have much left to live. Drinks master, you do, or the cupbearer, if we want to be fancy about it. And that's what happens at the very end of last week's Torah portion, in which we see the baker losing not only his job, but his head. And we also see the cupbearer elevated or certainly reinstated in his service in Pharaoh's court. That's the end of last week's Torah portion. But then we get to the beginning of this week's Torah portion, which Pharaoh has some dreams. He dreams about harvests and cows, and some weak, some strong, and he doesn't know what to do. He's sought out counsel. He has sought out advice from his advisors, asking what to make of these dreams. And yes, it has been fascinating in all of these. There are always a couple. They're always in couples. They're always in pairs. Joseph had his pair of dreams. We had the pair of dreamers, incarcerated dreamers, right? The baker and the cupbearer of Pharaoh. And now we get another coupling. We have another pairing of dreams, in this by Pharaoh himself. What to do? Now, no one seems to satisfactorily be able to decipher or otherwise interpret Pharaoh's dreams. He does not seem to be really happy. But, wait a second. The cupbearer suddenly, after a couple of years, suddenly remembers that he had promised Joseph, when they were incarcerated together, I will remember you, I won't forget you. He forgets him for a couple of years. But now, at this moment, he recalls him, and fortunately he's incarcerated. So Pharaoh says, bring him out. Let's see what he can do with my dreams. Now, Joseph satisfactorily interprets the dreams. He says, that was your dream. Here's your interpretation. But then we seem to go another level. Now, I'm just going to read for us several verses. So after having interpreted to Pharaoh about his dreams, and this is in chapter 41, verses 33 through 36, then he makes a prescription. He says, "Now therefore let Pharaoh look out a man discreet and wise, and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh do this, and let him appoint overseers over the land, and take up the fifth part of the land of Egypt in the 7 years of plenty. And let them gather all the food of these good years that come, and lay up corn under the hand of Pharaoh for food in the cities, and let them keep it. And the food shall be for a store to the land against the 7 years of famine," because he had dreams about 7 years, 7 fat cows, and then 7 lean cows. So 7 good years and 7 not good years for the harvests in the land of Egypt. "And let them gather all the food of these good years that come, and lay up corn under the hand of Pharaoh for food in the cities, and let them keep it. And the food shall be for a store to the land against the 7 years of famine, which shall be in the land of Egypt, that the land perish not through the famine." Okay, so that's the end of his prescription. So he interprets Pharaoh's dream, and now he gives a prescription. And verse 37, "And the thing was good in the eyes of Pharaoh and the eyes of all his servants. And Pharaoh said, Pharaoh said unto his servants, Can we find such a one as this, a man in whom the Spirit of God is? And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, For as much as God has shown you all of this, there is none so discreet and as wise as you. You shall be over my house, and according unto the word, to your word shall all my people be ruled. Only in the throne will I be greater than you." So, and it continues. But I always scratched my head. I always was baffled by this. Okay, it's one thing for Joseph to satisfactorily and insightfully interpret these dreams of Pharaoh. That's pretty impressive on its own. That's great and that's good. But to then turn over second in command of all of Egypt. Why? For a dream interpreter, you're going to give him everything? Why? What are we missing? I have been thinking about this, and really, I just to be totally honest with you, I really never understood that. I didn't understand why is Pharaoh now giving second in command of all of Egypt, second only to him, to this previously incarcerated, seemingly non-native, right? That's a pretty shocking and startling thing to encounter in the text, and I don't know if that I'm alone. Maybe you also have experienced that. But a year ago, writing on the Parsha, now was Rabbi Jonathan Sacks. Now, Rabbi Sacks had been the chief rabbi of the United Kingdom, and the unfortunate thing is that he passed away last November. And so he had written this before he passed, but it was published posthumously. So he has some really intriguing insights here into Joseph and his dreams. So it said, I'm going to quote from Rabbi Sacks. He says, "Joseph had 3 gifts that many have in isolation, but few in combination. The first is that he dreamed dreams." We saw that. Initially, second, I'm skipping around in what he wrote. I'm happy, if you're curious, I'm happy to provide a printout of what Rabbi Sacks wrote about this Torah portion in full. But for the time being, I'll just pick out highlights from Rabbi Sacks' writing on this. Second, like Sigmund Freud, many centuries later, Joseph had a gift for interpreting the dreams of others. He did so for the butler and baker in prison, and in this week's parasha, for Pharaoh. His interpretations were neither magical nor miraculous. In the case of the butler and baker, he remembered that in 3 days' time it would be Pharaoh's birthday. It was the custom of rulers to make a feast on... Okay, so far so good. We've seen him dreaming dreams, and we've seen him interpreting dreams. Joseph's most impressive achievement, though, was his third gift. The ability to implement dreams, solving the problem of which they were an early warning. No sooner had he told of a 7-year famine than he continued without pause to provide a solution, and that is what I have already read for us. We have seen Joseph, the brilliant administrator, before, both in Potiphar's house and in the prison. It was this gift, demonstrated at precisely the right time, that led to his appointment as Viceroy of Egypt. Okay, so this third aspect we haven't really fully gone into yet. Now, what's fascinating, Rabbi Sachs continues, and he says, from Joseph, therefore, we learn three principles. The first is dream dreams. Never be afraid to let your imagination soar. When people come to me, okay, so he continues on. So that's the first one. The second principle is that leaders interpret other people's dreams. They articulate the inchoate. They find a way of expressing the hopes and fears of a generation. But here's what I think is really fascinating. He goes on into this third one, right? We talked about this. I mentioned what he had written about this third aspect that's really shining in this week's Torah portion. The ability to implement dreams. So Joseph now, it's one thing to interpret dreams. It's one thing to look, to think about it. But now he's providing a prescription. He's saying, look, now that we have this data in front of us, how can we plan for the future? Taking the data we know, apparently providing insights into the future for us. How can we use that to our benefit? Are we just going to let dreams dream? Or just let dreams lie? What are we going to do about that? Now, if we think back, the first set of dreams that Joseph experienced, people are bowing down to him. Okay. The interpretation was incredibly clear. But what actionable aspects are to that? Well, what was actionable was that his brothers got rid of him. They were incredibly jealous, and it was also very arrogant. In the second set, it was the baker and the cupbearer. Well, what is actionable? I don't know. For the baker to make his peace and the cupbearer to be excited about returning to being in Pharaoh's service. But really insightful is taking these 7 years of plenty and storing up for the 7 years of famine. That's pretty insightful. That is being thoughtful, and that is incorporating a long-term strategy. So that's very fascinating. And Rabbi Sachs says the third principle from what he's taken from Joseph is to find a way to implement dreams. First, see the problem, then find a way of solving it. Wow. Before this insights of Rabbi Sachs, I mentioned earlier, been baffled, been shocked, wondering why did Pharaoh elevate Joseph for simply interpreting his dreams? Well, I was wrong, because he didn't simply interpret the dreams. He interpreted a dream, and he also came up with a plan to best navigate the future issues that would be arising for Egypt. And that was enough to elevate him to the viceroy of Egypt. And that was enough to have him elevated to a high level of leadership. Someone who can not only take the dreams, but implement practical solutions to people's benefit. So that was for me really insightful about Joseph, and I really also liked what Rabbi Sachs had to say. And just to go over them again, because I think these were for me really fascinating. These three takeaways are: dream dreams. Never be afraid to let your imagination soar. That's number one. Number two, leaders interpret other people's dreams, articulating the inchoate. They find a way of expressing the hopes and fears of a generation. And then finally, number three, find a way to implement dreams. First, see a problem, then find a way of solving it. Dreams are nice, but what do we do with them? And these are some really fascinating insights from Rabbi Sachs, taking from Joseph. All right, thank you. So I hope that you found this insightful. I certainly found Rabbi Sachs, his comments, his insights to be really helpful for understanding the parasha, and also for having takeaways for us in our lives. Dreams are not exclusive to the Bible. We dream dreams as well. Really fascinatingly, the rabbis of the Talmud said an non-interpreted dream is like an unopened letter. There's a message waiting there for us to open up, to experience, and to see what we can do with. So with that, I hope you enjoyed. And before we go, I just want to express my appreciation to the Jewish Home of Cincinnati. All Jewish life and programming here at Cedar Village are through the financial support of the Jewish Home of Cincinnati. So thank you. And with that, I want to say thank you for watching, and Shabbat Shalom.